Welcome to What's Your Story, where we, Jamie Marco,
and Stan Brown,
delve into the extraordinary lives of everyday people.
Listen in as we uncover the unique tales that shape who we are,
one story at a time.
Hey, let's get ready to explore today's story.
Let's do it. Hi, Daddy.
Oh, hello, Jamie.
Daddy-o, Dodd, father.
Just call me dog. Big dog.
Do you have a preference?
No.
Oh,
Just
did
call,
I?
just call me.
Like, at what age did I stop calling you Daddy, like a dad?
Never call me Pops?
I don't think so. Did I? I don't think so.
No Papa?
I mean, I'm still called Mama or Mommy. Like, I'm dreading the day when she like goes from that to Mom.
Listen, this is like the natural evolution of stuff. You have to accept it. Not
Yeah,
easy.
I don't know, I want to accept it. I really do.
You want to keep them, you want to control them. They have to get, the kids have to get their own independence.
I get that, but it's like,
That's the whole package.
can I can I like select what I want and not what?
Not a la carte, no.
Oh.
It's a meal deal.
Okay, I do like how your yellow shirt is tying into the yellow on your hat. Well done.
And the light blue watch band
Is that a new watch band?
could be.
Okay, very nice. Very nice. All right.
You have to dress for the part. You know what I mean?
What's the part you're playing?
Podcast host. What'd you think it was? Fisherman, deep sea fisherman.
Well,
Welcome to Wild Catch, folks.
Today, our guest, is someone that you referred to us.
Yes.
Do you want to share with the audience before we let the guest in how you know this individual?
No, Alan Goldberg. He's a neighbor, also a companion at the pool.
Okay.
And he has a very interesting background, which probably may appeal to many, actually most of our listeners.
Really? Should I let him
in? If you invite somebody, you got to let them in. You can't keep them out.
I was going to tell you something. I can't remember what it was, but I was going to tell you something.
You probably remember after we're off air.
Yeah, I'll tell you later. All right, let's let it in. Here we go. We're going to let our guest in. So it's Alan Goldberg, correct? Yes. Okay, so listener, we are welcoming in Alan Goldberg today. And we're excited to have Alan on the podcast. So as we do that, it's really fun because
come on in, Alan. Hello.
Alan, you're on mute. So if you take yourself off mute there on the bottom of your screen. Amazing. I'm looking forward to meeting you. Hi, Alan. I'm Jamie. Nice to meet you.
Same here. Who's that
Yeah,
man?
that's Alan. That's Jamie. Nice to see you, partner.
Nice to see you guys.
Yes, I was just talking to my dad about how you guys know each other, and I guess you are pool companions. Is that correct?
Yeah, Del Webb.
And we're neighbors.
There you go.
Just don't give my address out.
Yeah, we don't do that. We try to keep it up. It's so nice to meet you, and I'm so grateful that you said yes for being a guest. So thank you. So, Alan, before we typically start our interviews, we ask the same question of all of our guests to find out where your mental state is today. And that question is as such. On a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being it's the best day you have ever had, you do not have a worry in the world, everything is amazing,
Every day.
right? To a 1 being that you should not be interacting with people today and should not what I like to be called peopling at all.
And close to a 1, don't turn this off.
Yeah. You don't trace. You still stay here. What is your number right now?
A little introspection.
Say a 10.
Ooh, look at
You
that.
mean it doesn't get any better than this? Must be us.
Look where we live.
All right, it's true. And look who you're talking to. You're live.
That is true. And you are, are you fully retired right now, Alan? Are you retired? Are you still
Yeah,
working?
I'm fully retired for the
right.
last 5 years.
Got it. Okay. So that's fairly recent. And, I think it's really interesting. And we'll talk about that as we get into the conversation. But we have heard so many people that when they retire, they miss working or they can go either way for them. So we'll get to that. But Alan, you obviously have not lived in Del Webb your entire life in Florida because that community is only about how many years old now?
About 7.
About 7 years old. So where did you start your life? What part of the world did you start your life in?
Born and raised in Philadelphia.
Okay.
Probably
Systems. Lived in the suburbs probably for 40 of my 70 years.
like
wow.
you're a native son.
Do you bleed green?
Yes, I was up till 11:45 last night.
Oh my goodness. So this is airing at a later date. This actually may air after the 2026 Super Bowl, but I don't know what happened last night. So did your Eagles fly?
Yeah, 16 to 9. They
Ooh,
beat
Okay.
Detroit.
wipeout.
So
They
we do record our episodes in advance just due to scheduling. My dad's scheduling because he's so busy. No, just kidding. He's
Yeah,
retired.
that's why I was wondering because Stan had said that you mentioned February or March or something. I thought, then why am I doing it now? But then it dawned on me, you probably have other ones to edit first and go
Yeah, but we're
through.
talking we're talking 2030. We're way out of
No,
it.
no, no. But we are recording live now. So we are
When does
recording
my
this
wife
conversation.
get to, yeah,
Yeah,
when does my wife get to see this?
yeah, so this conversation is already being recorded, but we do record in advance. Listeners know that. We try to keep it as relevant as possible. So something's in my eye, sorry. We really as possible. We don't edit that out. But no, so it will be relevant sort of to them when we realize what game we're talking about. But tell me about, so you were in,
Let me jump over. I've seen Alan's resume, and your resume is very akin to a CVS receipt, which is excessively long, and I could probably wallpaper my house. And I think the reason that the topic, your career is so relevant, the country is basically over medicated.
Right.
We've been taking pills for years, and I think your background as a senior pharmacist, and we'll get into some of that also. I think the pharmacist is probably more well versed not just in the reactions of medications, but also in the interactions, because people are usually taking more than one medication. So I think his whole background has been in pharmacy.
but we don't, well, let's start before that, like, because you don't just like pop out of the womb and get into pharmacy.
Usually, some people do.
So you're in
Well, my mother
Philly.
wanted me to be a doctor.
Oh,
Oh,
mothers
got
want that
it.
crap. What do they know?
Sorry, there's something in my eye. Listeners can see I'm like having like an eye attack over here.
We'll deal with it.
So you're in Philly and you're born there, and then so you go to high school, everything like that. Where did you, like after high school, how did you decide what you wanted to do?
Well, I kind of went, like I mentioned, I went the pre-med route. So I went to
No.
Penn State and State College, University Park, PA, which was 4 hours away from home.
Oof.
Wow.
So I was there. Then I realized this was now like in the early to mid 70s, where you had to be the cream of the crop to even get into medical school then. So I knew my grades were good, but they weren't stupendous. Let's put it that way. So I figured I got to use my credits for something. So I went to a counselor's office to look to see what I could use my credits for and stumbled on a couple different careers and then eventually figured, well, let me try pharmacy. So then I applied to pharmacy school and I wanted to stay in the state of Pennsylvania. So I applied to what was then called the Philadelphia College of Pharmacy and Science, which is now called something else. I
How
think
long was
you
the program?
pharmacy.
Yeah, how long? 2 years school?
Well, I had all you needed was 2 years of pre-pharmacy and 3 years of pharmacy itself. So it was a total of five, and you got a bachelor's degree. Now
Gotcha.
today it's a 6 year program, and everybody gets a doctor of pharmacy.
Ooh.
So you have
Wow.
doctors of pharmacy and CVS. So it's a little
Were
whatever.
you when you were growing up with science? I mean, I know you said your mom wanted to be a doctor, right? But like, were you
Yeah,
into
my grades. I
science?
mean, I was what was a dean's list, A's and B's, and if I got a C, it was oh wow. But so I wound up going to Temple University in Philadelphia.
Got
But
it.
I went from living away from my folks at Penn State to then living with my parents when I went to pharmacy school.
Oh
But
wow.
medical school
Now, do you have
is highly competitive, as you
yeah?
know.
Now, do you have siblings as well too? Or
I have an older sister, 4 years older. She
Don't
never
tell me
went.
she's a doctor.
No, she never went to college, or she went one semester at Philadelphia College of Pharmacy, not pharmacy, Philadelphia, Philadelphia Community College.
Gotcha.
got it. And then were either of your parents in the medical field?
No, my mother was more like a secretary, accountant type of thing, but she didn't have an accounting degree, and my father was in sales.
Okay. So growing up, you were living in Philly, like, and you said like a suburb of Philly. So things were very different back then. My dad talks about how he played outside and they played stickball outside and
Yeah, we
all that good
played
stuff.
till it was dark, and then you got a rap on the back window, get in for dinner.
And we all showed up.
Why, I'm just curious. We meet so many people, and we'll get into like how you happen in pharmacy as well too, but we meet so many people from either the Midwest or the Northeast that really just stayed and never left. Like they grew up there and then they waited to retire later to come to Florida. But what was it about that area that you grew up with that you just wanted to stay in Philly for school and for going to pharmacy school? And, like you wanted to stay there and not branch out? What do you think it is?
Well, I personally, I didn't really have that much interest to go anywhere else. I did when I was before I got married 40 years ago. I'm married 21 years now. Um, but I moved to Miami in 1984
Oh.
and took a job at a retail pharmacy, which I swore I would never work retail. That's a whole nother story. It turned out that unfortunately I was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma when I was living in Miami, and then decided after 2 years to move back home for the family support and friend support or whatever. It was tough living in Miami when we know what Miami is today, but it was, and I only know about Miami because my mother's sister and husband and family moved to Miami Beach in 1960
Oh boy.
before it was vogue to move to Florida.
Yeah.
And they lived everywhere. They lived in Miami Beach, Surfside, North Miami Beach, or whatever. So it was just, and I say this to people today, Florida is a state that you either love it or you don't. And it's different living here full time versus visiting. When you come to visit, it's like, oh, this is the, whatever. But anyway.
It's the
So
American Caribbean, that's all.
yeah, so in answer to your question, Jamie, why did I stay in the area? It's just I don't know, I just was familiar with the whole thing and I didn't travel that much then. And, I know there were a lot of kids that went to my high school that moved to California or they moved to Colorado or Texas or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Al,
remember in the
did you
early
work
80s,
there?
a lot of,
Did you work during your illness in Miami?
hmm?
Did you work during your illness in Miami?
Well, what happened was I didn't get ill for until I was there a year. Then I came back to Philadelphia to be treated at the University of Pennsylvania Hospital there and lived with my parents. And I was determined that I was not going to die, even though it was one of the few cancers at that time. And I think they probably still say, if you're going to get cancer, that's the cancer to get. Well, the only cancer to get is not getting cancer at all,
Yeah.
because I suffered the consequences and Stan knows that I had, a horrific heart procedure February of 24 here in Sarasota, that it's a miracle I'm alive talking to you today. Because it came very close for me not making it. But anyway, um, but in answer to your question, Stan, I was determined to get back with my life, even though I lost 113 pounds, not 113. I lost enough. I think at that time I weighed like 128 or 130. I got down to 113, or you could literally count all the ribs and, because I couldn't eat because I was radiated in this region here, the lower jaw and my upper chest. So
Yeah. Inflamed and you just
the
couldn't eat.
radiation just devoid everything and whatever. It's a long story. But then I went back to live in Miami after treatment, probably a couple months later. And then after I was there and I realized I hadn't really met anybody significant yet, and it was just a drag, and I decided to move back home. So that's what I did. So I moved back to Philly in 86. And from there, the rest is my career. I
Yeah.
went back. I was always interested in hospital pharmacy, and that's where I worked. Primarily, when I went back, I picked up and worked at a hospital pharmacy, and then eventually moved into the pharmaceutical industry in the late 90s and worked for a large pharma there. And subsequently have worked at other pharmas in the area in the industry I'm in. That I monitor adverse drug reactions of people that are taking either prescription drugs that are already marketed or if they're in clinical trials. And in fact, I still, even though I'm retired 5 years, I consult for a company out in San Diego that I monitor their adverse drug reactions. And I do 1 or 2 hours a day, and it keeps my mind going. So you said earlier about people that retire and don't have set things. I mean, I don't golf, I play canasta, but but it keeps my mind going. And I don't, right now, I'm sufficient doing that. I mean, uh, it took me a little bit. They were very understanding when I was uh, out of sorts last year, but they took me back and I'm back to full swing now.
I have so many questions. Okay. Oh my gosh, so many questions. So first of all, was it Hodgkin's or non-Hodgkin's lymphoma that you had?
With Hodgkin's lymphoma.
So
So,
that's out of the two, one is like better than the other, right?
yeah, the Hodgkin's is better than the non-Hodgkin's, although they've made a tremendous advancements in that non-Hodgkin's in the 40 years. I mean, when I was treated or diagnosed, they did a laparotomy where they went into the center of my abdomen and biopsied all the lymph nodes. I had this horrific procedure, which they don't do anymore. It's called a lymphangiogram, where they inserted needles in between my toes and on my instep while I was awake under no sedation to shoot dye up my legs to see whether those lymph nodes were involved. They don't do that
No
anymore.
wonder
They
they
do
don't do it anymore.
How did you find
back now. In fact, now, like I had radiation. I had stage 2B, which meant that I only had it in the neck and the upper chest. Stage 3 was like neck, chest, abdomen above the umbilical cord.
To our viewers, what were your initial symptoms? You knew something was wrong.
The symptom I had, Stan, was I woke up one morning when I was still living in Miami, and I had this huge golf ball size
Wow.
lump on my neck.
Just
That
like
wasn't
a,
there the day before. Wasn't the day before. You just woke up and
Now, I was starting to feel a little like I had a cold,
sure.
sniffles, whatever like that, but I didn't run a fever or whatever. And I literally woke up one day and I had this golf ball sized lump on my neck. And that's indicative of some type of lymphoma type thing.
There's no
So,
lymph. There's any lymph nodes in that neck area? It's connected with or no?
yeah.
yeah, there's lymph nodes
All over
goes
here.
all up and down in your body, really. I was initially, I guess, diagnosed at a hospital in Miami. But again, because I was so familiar with Philadelphia and having like 5 major medical schools in Philly,
Oh,
I figured,
sure.
you know what, I'm not staying down here. I'm going with it. I'm fortunate myself. I had my surgery at Sarasota last year, and there was an option because I was still being seen by doctors at Penn because we had a place in Margate, New Jersey that we recently sold. And when I saw that doctor in 2023, he basically said to me, because they were watching my heart probably the last 5 to 8 years,
Why?
because
What prompted that? What prompted them to watch your heart?
well, they started hearing a heart murmur probably about 10 years ago by my internist up north, but before we moved to Florida. And then they sent me for echocardiograms, and it showed that my aortic valve was starting to be compromised. It went from mild stenosis, which means the closing, to moderate and then severe. And I got to the severe state, but I was asymptomatic, meaning I didn't have shortness of breath, I didn't have chest pains, etc. So they said, keep on doing what you're doing. I continued to take spin classes and work out, and I just thought nothing of it. It wasn't until November of 23, my wife and I went to Hawaii for a vacation. And because of the altitude change, I noticed I started having symptoms. I woke up 2 nights in the hotel out of breath. And so when I came back, I said to my wife, I have to be seen. And I was being seen by a cardiologist here in Sarasota anyway. Um, so he basically said, well, your heart's talking to you now, Alan. And so to make a long story short, I went for open heart surgery, and they were going to just replace my aortic valve. But prior to the procedure, they found out that I needed a mitral valve replacement. And it's more common for aortic valve to be replaced, not so much mitral, although they can do it. Mitral valve usually repair, but I went for the whole thing. So ideally, I was to go in and have the surgery, go to a step down unit, be home within a week or so. I don't remember anything from the day of surgery, which was like February, I don't remember the exact date. February, say it was February 20th of 2024. I did not wake up until March 17th, where
Wow.
I found out that even though within the first couple hours after surgery, my wife was called by the heart surgeon and said, he's doing fine, he's in ICU, he's up talking, and I don't remember any of that. And she came to the hospital and supposedly I was talking. I don't remember. Like I said, I don't remember anything for 3 weeks. Then it turned out I went on an ECMO machine, which is a machine that was used a lot during COVID, where they is heart and lung to keep you alive. Typically, that's only a 1 day ordeal. I was on the
Was it a ventilator or no?
Yeah, it's the whole thing. The heart, yeah, it keeps your lungs working and your heart. I went into cardiogenic shock,
Wow.
which means that my heart wasn't pumping not sufficiently enough to diffuse blood throughout my body. So they induced the coma. So I was in a coma for 3 weeks and
Wow.
I was hooked up to all these machines. I have no recollection of any of this. When I
What was their prognosis at that time? Didn't look good.
Well, initially it wasn't. It wasn't, I mean, to this day, Michelle has not told me every single thing because it's probably too upsetting for her to tell
I'm
me
sure.
that. I'd like to know, but I don't. I know some goofy friend asked if she took pictures. Why would she have taken pictures lying in the bed with all the room
Right.
was full of machines
Oh.
People
and
ask the
something
dumbest
that
questions. People do ask the dumbest questions, but go
But
ahead.
well, since this is all about me, um,
Yeah, and no, 100%.
I attribute a lot, most all my health issues. And the thing is, people look at me and they say, "You look fine," whatever. I mean, Michelle saw me in the worst, like, and I don't know how bad I was. I mean, I lost 20 pounds after that ordeal. I've since gained it back. And my energy level it took me probably a year and a half for me to get back to where I felt close to what you would consider normal. But unfortunately, and I said this the other day to my wife, that had I not had the Hodgkin's lymphoma, and to this day, I don't know why, they don't know what causes Hodgkin's lymphoma. They know how to cure it. They knew how to cure it back then. Today, they don't even use radiation, they just do chemotherapy. But chemotherapy, because I had stage 2B, it wasn't um, a first line treatment for that. So I went through the radiation. What did I know? It was
Sure.
upsetting to my parents. At that time, I was 30. It was upsetting to my parents. Obviously, you see your child going through this
Horrific.
Ordeal.
ordeal,
Sure.
and I lost my hair, but that has nothing to do why I don't have an hair. But I had a full head of hair. But
I want pictures. I need pictures.
yeah, but subsequent to all that, and I lived a normal life up until probably about, I mean, normal health-wise, I'm saying. So
Sure.
we're talking 1985 up until probably about 2011. And then I started getting all these other weird things. I've lived through a septic shock, hypovolemic shock, and now cardiogenic shock. So my body's been through a lot. Some people say, my God, you must have like I'm a cat.
You did the magic three. You're finished.
But do you
I
think that
know.
it's all tied back to the cancer?
I think so because what happened in 2011, it was, I was still working or whatever. And at that time, it was July. It was very hot and humid in Philly. I was working in downtown Philly and going with commuter trains and whatever like that. I don't know whether that has nothing to do with it. But anyway, I tried to go to bed one night and I could not fall asleep. And for 4 hours, I had this intense chest pain, but in the center of my chest, like an elephant was standing on it. Well, it turned out I had pericarditis, which is an inflammation of the sac wall around your heart. Went to the hospital, local hospital. They thought I was having a heart attack. I didn't, but it was just the inflammation of the pericardium. So I had that. Then 2 weeks later, I developed left lower lobe pneumonia, where they literally drained a liter worth of fluid off my lung through my back, and that was a horrific procedure. And then I had one dose of atrial fib,
Gee.
and then 3 years later in 2014, I went for a prostate biopsy that went bad, and I nearly died from that. I had septic shock from that, hospitalized for that. And then in 2021, we were at the Jersey Shore for the summer, and I developed a duodenal ulcer bleed where I was eliminating blood rectally and went into hypovolemic shock. And this was like sort of like, it was still that COVID-ish
Oof.
period
Mm.
afterwards. So it was, you didn't see anybody. I was in ICU for 4 days. So between that and now this heart thing, it's like I feel like I've been through enough, but I always live, and it's hard for somebody that's never been through what I've been through, especially to
Absolutely.
now is I always fear that something else is going to hit me. But I try to stay as positive as I can without worrying about, like last week, started feeling aches and pains in my back and at my side. And, being a pharmacist, I know enough about the body. And so you start dwelling and then you play Google a
Sure.
doctor and the whole thing. So right away, I think, oh, I have a mass on my, you know, somewhere in my body. And then I had a headache or whatever. Did it metastasize to my brain or something?
The man who knew too much. Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and my father,
Yeah.
he used to sit in the sun, never took care of himself. He had something on his back that eventually became malignant melanoma and grew internally and
Mm.
metastasized to his brain. I'm not that bad. I mean, I sat in the sun, but I've been through 9 Mohs procedures, but I'm not worried about that part. But I had no familial history of cancer, and I wonder what's it all about. This is my personal thing. It may not be fact. If you talk to doctors or whatever, I think something environmental causes a lot of cancers, obviously. But me in particular, when I went to Penn State, and it was, the campus at that time had a lot of old buildings, and I remember I took organic chemistry.
Sure.
That particular building reeked from organic chemicals. So we all know that, you don't want to be exposed to too much of this stuff.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I've tried to Google up what was the prevalence of cancer for students that went to Penn State in the 70s, but I can't find anything. But anyway,
Well, yeah.
this is my theory. It may not be fact.
You could be
So
the new Aaron Brockovich and like, breaking some thing. I'm interested. So because you have like a vast knowledge of medicines and adverse reactions and all that, what type of patient are you when you are in the hospital? Because you know everything they're giving you, I would imagine. You
well,
know
I
what
would say it's funny because I read the reports and like they always say he's a 70-year-old, well-nourished, very pleasant man, because I like to talk to, I talk medical terminology with them. So
Sure.
when they start trying to like, you know, legally, not legalese, but make it in general, I said, you can talk medicine with me. So I'm able to think, but also being a patient, Jamie, like, the times where I was hospitalized, I'm more keen to, well, what are they injecting me with?
Sure.
Yeah.
Or like this IV bag, it needs to be changed, or my central line or my peripheral line should only be in for 48 or 72 hours and it's past that. Are you going to change? So I
Sure.
have more knowledge than the average person doesn't know.
Well, and I think that's amazing because, I've heard so many horror stories. I experienced one where I had had a really high fever and we didn't know what it was. I mean, I think it was like 103.4 at one point, like super high. Went to the hospital and will not name what hospital it was and was there. They couldn't figure out what it was. But when I left, I was given 5 prescriptions of painkillers, but I never once said I was in pain. I just had a high fever. And it was like, what is happening here? Like, why are you giving me? My husband and I joke, we have these like prescriptions, 5 prescriptions for painkillers. And I can imagine in your lifetime doing what you do, you have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly when it comes to prescriptions and pharmacy and all of that. So it's got to be
That's
good to
funny
know.
you should say that because the last company when I was working was the company that developed Narcan nasal spray. And
Oh,
they're all
wow.
around people like such as yourself were given prescriptions and whether they got them filled or not, and didn't know the proper way to use them. And then they became addicts. And
Yeah.
and it showed that an opioid addicted person isn't necessarily someone uneducated or unable to thrive, say. It could be, a college professor, it could be a mother of children or whatever. They
Yeah.
don't know how to
Anybody.
select for these things. I mean, when this product first came out, I mean, Prince passed away. And what's it? Demi Lovato was revived on Narcan nasal spray. So, it's there's and I can remember when OxyContin came out, and
Mhm.
whether you saw that documentary series, I think it was Dope
Based in
Sick.
Florida, wasn't it? Wasn't it about Florida house? Like, are you talking the one that was?
No, it's about the Sackler family in New England that developed the OxyContin. And when OxyContin came out, I think it was in the early 2000s, it was supposed to be the end all to prevent addiction because it was a controlled release. It could not be cut, it could not be smashed. So addicts who would normally take some of the other ones like Percocet, Percodan, and Tylenol number three and grind it up and either inhale it or inject it or whatever. So they said OxyContin couldn't do that. Well, it turned out it wasn't. And then if you watch this series, or know the story, they just kept on marketing it at higher doses for profit, and now and then they went to jail. But I don't know whether they
Wow.
all are still in jail. There's been a Netflix and Hulu
Yeah.
I think
series.
they made a final settlement which involved the
Yeah,
non-liability
they,
themselves.
they did make a settlement. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
funny because I worked for that company before the Purdue Federal company became Purdue
Really?
Pharma.
Yeah.
Ah, okay, yeah, Purdue, yeah.
Were you, so what was your role when you retired? Like you are like a lead pharmacist, or did you have more of a administration leadership role? What was your role?
Considered like a pharmacovigilance, which is a big fancy word for drug safety.
Okay.
Specialists. I mean, in the industry, I actually rose to the senior director level where I had, a number of people under me. Might have had people in other offices, like I was in on the East Coast and we had an office on the West Coast that I would have to fly back and forth at times. And then I developed policies and procedures, and worked with the legal teams in pharmaceutical companies to make sure the contracts were appropriate. So my role now is to monitor adverse drug reactions. We have a third-party vendor that actually does the grunt work. I just basically oversee that they're doing it right, and
How does
plan it
that
out.
work? So
They
are you
they
like
do actual
waiting?
study. They do
Yeah, like are you
studies.
waiting for someone to take like a medicine and then like die or have an allergic
Well,
reaction
what
and then you start
happens
like,
is adverse drug reaction reporting in what they call post-marketed or the prescription world is voluntary. So like if you get a prescription, I mean, you probably get those leaflets from the pharmacy, which
yeah,
nobody reads except my mother, because my mother
yeah.
she got every adverse reaction listed to the point where when I used to fill her prescriptions, I just gave her the vial. I didn't give her the.
Well, it's like if you watch the commercials for everything, it's like
Yeah,
take
I
this
know.
drug and you'll won't have psoriasis, but you'll have everything else and might die.
You'll have
Ah,
a,
you're like, oh my God.
you'll have stroke, you'll become impotent, the whole bit.
Right, right. It's got to
It's
be really interesting for you as of late because of all of the things that are in the news about vaccines and about drugs and all the different drugs that are out. And the Narcan thing you mentioned, first of all, now they have Amazon drones that actually bring that. So if somebody is ODing,
now over the counter. When it first came out, it was prescription only, but it's over the counter now.
yeah, like in our area, we are a test site in Lakewood Ranch for the Amazon drones that have it. And if you call 911, the drones from the fire department will come out and say, like, it's really incredible. But how have you seen the industry just change? Obviously, when you started in, I think you said in the early 80s, right? That's when you started early 80s, 84-ish. Remember?
I started practicing pharmacy in 1978, but I'd moved into the industry in 1998, so 20 years later. So 20 years, I was basically a practicing hospital pharmacist, except for that little bit in Miami where I worked retail, and I hated it. But anyway, I
But I
hated it
mean,
on day two, and
yeah.
I knew I made the wrong
But
choice.
it's changed, but
Anyway,
like there's so many more drugs on the market now than there were then, so many more. And when you talk about adverse effects, you see it's become such a litigious thing as well too. Now I feel like based on what doctors are prescribing and what's happening. So I guess I'm trying to think out my question is, but you've seen some big changes.
Well, I think because everything Alan's been involved in is really data backed. So the more
Yeah.
data you can assess, which is why AI can be a great aid in compiling all the data in one particular shot and
Most
seeing.
people don't even think about reporting an adverse reaction, except
Really?
like if I had something like, where I didn't feel right. Technically, I should probably call up that company, but I don't. But
So where they
Do you
get
call the pharmacist like what I call
you can
like
call the
pharmacy?
pharmacist, and I guarantee most of these retail pharmacists are going
Don't
to say
care.
you need to do that. But so when you get those leaflets, there's a phone number usually at the bottom on how to, if you suspect an adverse reaction, and they give you the FDA's telephone number. So you call.
that's the only input they use for that data?
Well, um, yes and no. No, not that's not the only input. If they are marketing the product, they train the sales help and the medical science liaisons that are out in the field on how to report an adverse event or a product quality complaint. And that training is provided by somebody in the drug safety. So I actually, at this consulting company, I'm connected with the training department at the company to make sure that all their help is appropriately trained. Now, whether they want to do it is another thing because it's voluntary.
Right.
So we have when you work for a company, you're obligated if you become aware, but you're not supposed to solicit to ask for adverse events. It's only if you happen to hear about it. That's the way the language is, and and adverse event reporting in the U.S. is voluntary. But which is different than if a clinical trial, which is more structured with investigators and clinical research associates, they actually will closely monitor patients to see how they're doing. They'll do their vitals, they'll check their, other things, their blood work and whatever, and then they look to see whether, and then they're obligated from their respect to report those adverse events. But what happens with all this information that comes in through adverse event reporting is if they start to see what they call a signal or a consistency in the same type of reaction that
Sure.
they didn't see in clinical trials, then it could change the labeling. So when a product is first marketed and they develop the actual package insert, that's all based on clinical trials or comparative products that are in the same drug class. So they come out with this humongous um, uh, document, which is considered the label. But what happens is, like, say in the label, they only saw like less than 1% of patients that had a headache, but then they got all these headaches from people that we reported, and it was consistent. So like it's like, wait a minute, so now they have departments within pharma companies that are called signal management. So they'll look to see. So it may be that they have to go back, or the FDA becomes aware of things, and then they come back to the drug company and they said, hey, you need to change your label. And so I've seen in my lifetime products that were on the market and were pulled because they've seen so many more reactions that they never saw in the trials.
Mhm.
And, like in a trial, they may only study 40 patients on, say, a stage 2 trial, and then in a stage 4 trial, it may be up to 400 patients. But when you market a product that goes out to the entire world and you're talking about billions of people, you start to see adverse reactions you don't see, so it may be pulled. I mean,
Sure.
when I first worked at the first large pharma that I had, they were under a major issue with a weight loss drug that was marketed to lose weight. But the doctors, and one thing with doctors, they can prescribe any medication off label if they want, if they feel that they can, there's not too, I mean, I'm not going to say that's a high preponderance, but, and Stan, you probably know this by working at Purdue, but what happened was at the time, and this was in the mid 90s when this drug came out and people were losing weight, but the doctors said, well, let's put it in combination with And there was another drug that was used for weight loss that came out in like I'm going to say the 60s or 70s. So they used it in combination.
Just
By
kidding.
using the two, the people really lost weight, because we're hearing all about this with Wegovy and whatever
Sure.
now.
Yeah.
Think it's probably safer than what was going on in the 90s. But what happened was they were seeing severe pulmonary hypertension with the combination of those two. People were dying. They even wrote a book about it. I read the book. So where I'm getting at is there's drugs that have been on the market. There was a drug called Celecoxib that was used for hypertension and it caused liver abnormalities. They had to pull that off the market. And then you see other things that come out of monitoring adverse drug reactions. When a drug called Lonitin that was marketed for blood pressure, people were starting to grow their hair and grow more hair.
Oh, can I write that? Can you spell that for me?
So that's where they came out with minoxidil, because minoxidil was the generic name for Lonitin that was used to lower blood pressure. But men or women were starting to grow hair, but really you had to be early onset hair loss,
Gotcha.
Stan. And what, if I tried
Missed
it.
it again.
But it's so
So then they came
interesting.
out
So
with
when we,
Rogaine. Rogaine came out, and then that became a topical application thing. And then the same thing with Viagra. Viagra was marketed and studied for hypertension, but the side effect was that men were starting to get erections from it. So the whole thing turned around, and they went that route, and
Mm.
yeah, the rest is history. So yeah, there's a lot that comes out of that.
so if I'm hearing you correctly, when we're watching a commercial and it says all the adverse effects, it means that somebody has reported that and that's how they know that, correct? Or is that coming from the trial?
Wait, repeat that again?
So when I watch a commercial and it says, take this drug, it will help you do this, and then they
Yeah,
talk
that's
about
probably all coming out of the trial
out of the
because these
trial.
meat products, and what's interesting, like when I watch the evening news on the national networks,
You cry
every
yourself to sleep.
every
Just
commercial,
kidding.
well, yeah, but every commercial is a pharmaceutical
Yeah.
today. It
Hmm.
never was like that. You don't see
Yeah.
milk advertisements or Pepsi Cola or things like that. Everything is a drug product. And half the time I listen to it, and it's like, and a lot of them are for these disease states that are so rare. I mean, it's great that they've come out with this. I'm not knocking that, but like they put so much money in marketing for certain
Yeah.
rare.
Condition, sure.
Sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
you're seeing more like for MS now, which is becoming more popular, or
Yeah.
certain types of cancers or things like
Still
that.
HIV. I still see a ton for HIV. Like when we're watching Netflix,
And
not Netflix, Hulu, because
a
we don't
lot
pay for it.
for, yeah, for people with HIV that are living with it. And it shows how, when HIV drugs first came out in the 80s, people weren't like now, people that have been on HIV drugs, even there's survivors from that era that are still alive today because of the combination. And the early drugs that came out were very lethal, so to speak, in that there were a lot of side effects, and people couldn't tolerate them, and unfortunately they succumbed to the illness. But
Ellen, when
today,
we were kids back in the 50s and 60s, it just appears there was not such a preponderance and abundance of different drugs. When did the pharmaceutical industry go bonkers? Was it in the 40s, the 50s? Something had to change, like
no, I
a
think it
switch.
became more stand in the probably in the late 60s or 70s, because you and I are both of the age when he went to a drugstore in the 50s or 60s. Besides the fact that they had a soda fountain there, you would go, you would drop off your prescription. It was written in Latin. It was handwritten. It was written in Latin. You gave it to Dr. Joe, who was a pharmacist. He took it in. There was no third party prescriptions. Everything was cash. But most of the drugs were compounded, meaning he had the powders and the elixirs and the
You made it on the spot.
things
Yeah.
on the shelf, and he was like when I went to pharmacy school, they taught me how to make tablets, capsules, suppositories, elixirs, emulsions, and the whole bit. Today, that's now an elective in pharmacy school because
It's a lost art.
when you
Sure.
walked into a
Um,
CVS today with a prescription that had to be compounded, they would say we can't fill it,
Mm.
which is sad how the profession went, because back then you couldn't refuse, otherwise you wouldn't have your drugstore.
And also, they taught you not to mix up a capsule with a suppository.
Well, there were stories about people, because back then suppositories were made with a cocoa butter base. And when a
Sounds
patient,
delicious.
right, and people smelled it, and again,
Oh,
they weren't properly told by the doctor or the pharmacist once they get it filled what they need to do with it. So it came like wrapped in like aluminum foil, little packet or whatever. It smelled like chocolate, it smelled like candy. So people swallowed them. They ate them. When in
that,
fact we know
that's
which route
it's
they
the
were
old joke
supposed
about that. Remember that joke? Where the guy goes home, he gets a prescription. He's just the doctor says, "It works." He says, I'm taking it. It's not working. He says, "What are you taking?" He says, "What do you want me to do? Stick it up my ass?"
to. Yeah. Yeah. So
Sorry.
there's
True
true
joke.
stories about that. Yeah, there's jokes, but there's true stories. So that's why it became big in the 90s. They pushed pharmacists, what they call, to provide pharmaceutical care. And which meant that, like, sometimes today you may go with a new prescription, and before they, like, say they give it to you, they'll say, could you move over to the consultation window, please? So
Mm,
they want the pharmacist to come out and ask you if you have any questions about a new med, which is good.
sure.
But
Never
even
happened to me.
still, though, it's not where it should be, because they don't have the time to spend 20 minutes to
They
go
don't care.
through the package insert and tell you to look for all these events. And if you see these events, call your doctor, or report it to the FDA, or report it to,
Yeah.
Pharma Company Incorporated, whatever like that. So it's like it's a rush job.
Yeah, well,
It,
that's everything, right? It's terrible. We
No
don't
one
see
spends the time.
you don't see that bedside manner. You try to get an appointment with a doctor, and they have their 15 minutes for you, and it's like, all right, then I'm done. I mean, some doctors are not like that, but again, just like everything else, what they call the person who graduates at the bottom of their class in medical school, doctor, right? Same thing goes with every other profession. You're not always going to have the
Well,
best.
I think the problem is compounded by the fact that today people who are taking medications are typically not on one; they're on multiple medications, and those multiples interact with each other in ways that sometimes no one knows what's going on.
Right, but you have to also report it. I'm curious, as you were talking earlier about the weight loss drugs, and those have been around forever. And I think it's GLP-1s, is that what they're called? Yeah, right.
but
That,
they weren't even around 20 years ago, those
but were they
drugs.
there for because it's a diabetic medicine, right? Isn't that what it originally was?
Increases your insulin.
Yeah.
And basically what it's doing, you were saying that they were seeing these adverse effects, but there's not enough research yet around these. But what I've understood is that the way that it works is that it basically just suppresses your appetite. So you're not eating. You're just taking in less
Right, and if
calories.
you
You're not
come
eating.
off of it, you're going to gain the weight back, and then you hear these stories about, what is it, Wegovy face or whatever,
Oh, I
or
haven't
what
heard that.
Oh, I've seen, I mean, you can tell when someone's on it. You can totally
they look
tell.
very gaunt in their face.
Yes, yes. I mean, I know quite a few people, and so it's scary though because you don't know what the adverse effects could be. And my thing is that you're also depriving yourself of the nutrients that you probably need that you're not getting because you're starving yourself. So I would imagine there's a lot of research happening around that and the adverse effects that will come from that.
Alan, in your study of pharmacy, is there any attention put to all the natural things the Indians used years ago, the naturopathic solution?
Um, there was now, again, it's an elective now, but it was mandatory when I went to school, is a course called pharmacognosy, which is the study of pharmaceuticals that are derived from plant sources,
Hmm.
from animal sources. So there were a lot of drugs that back in the 40s, 50s, well, even before the 40s, like our grandparents' age
Sure.
generation, where things were compounded, where they mixed a little extract of root of this and a little berry of that, and da, 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 and then they mixed it, whatever, whatever. But the one positive thing now with prescriptions, I would say very rarely do you get a handwritten prescription. That was a big thing in the 70s,
Yeah.
90s. You got these doctors that had horrific handwriting, and you heard about medication errors because
Ah,
they couldn't
Gonna read the
tell
writing.
whether it was 10 milligrams or was it 10.0 milligrams.
mm,
And then they taught
Jeez.
about not using the dot after. So you heard horrific stories where people were getting tenfold or a
ah,
hundredfold the dose of something, and people. So with today, everything, like you both know, is you go to your doctor and he's already like faxed. Well, they don't fax that much anymore, but they whatever they're
sure.
with the keyboard is already going to
Yeah.
Publix pharmacy or
Amazing.
CVS, and by the time you get home, your app notification says your
Yep.
prescription. So they get it better that way. That's a plus. You
Years
know,
ago, my daughter had like an ear infection or something, and I had to give her like amoxicillin or one of those things. And I remember I gave her, do you remember you were at my house and I gave her too much and I didn't read the thing and I was exhausted. And
Poison
yeah, I
control.
did. I like literally called poison control. I'm like, I think I just poisoned my daughter. I gave her too much. And they're like, you're fine. You're fine. Like she's gonna be
yeah, I've heard
okay.
stories back then they gave a drug called cefoxitin instead of amoxicillin because they couldn't read the prescription right. So a
Oh,
cephalosporin is used a little bit differently than a penicillin is, and whatever. So things have improved with this electronic transfer of prescriptions, for a patient chart. And now you have everybody now has access to the portal, and you can read everything. I mean, you both probably have access to your doctor's portal, and you can go in and
yeah.
whether you want to read it or not, because then
Yeah.
you read it and it's like, oh my God, I want to live. But
Wow.
um,
Are you able to write prescription? Like, do you have that
Well, it's
authority?
when in Florida, see, when I moved to Florida in the 80s, it was around the time when a pharmacist could prescribe a list of medicines which they were on a formulary system one time. So like I was able to like, if I remember, like cough and cold medicines that were might have been prescription, topical creams, like some steroid creams or whatever. I don't know what the formulary is now. I maintain both my Pennsylvania and Florida license up to about 5 years. So I used to have to do continuing education, whatever. But then I figured, you know what? I don't feel like doing this anymore, and I'm never going to go back and practice. Although I do remember in my 20s, I said, I'm going to keep my license up till I die because I'm going to volunteer and work as a pharmacist when
Oh.
Forget about it.
that was the last thing I wanted to do.
I can still get you a position in retail with either Walgreens or CVS.
Yeah,
Can
I'm
you
sure they
work
would
3 days
want
a
me.
week?
Now I know way too much, but I can tell you another story whether you want to include this in your
Hey,
It's
podcast.
we're
in, it's in,
recording. We
it's
don't
in. You're
edit,
live.
so go ahead.
Was when I worked in retail, which I hated. I was the only person behind the counter. I had no technician. I had no body at the register.
Wow.
I had a rotary style phone.
Wow.
People yelling at me, how long is it going to take to get, and I was fast. I think I had most prescriptions filled like in 5 minutes or
Whew.
whatever back then. But like then you had to stop and you had to call a doctor, but it wasn't like where you could just push a button and it automatically dialed to Dr. Smith. It was like C
Oh
H
my
till the
gosh, the
dog, the
rotary
rotor went
phone.
back, whatever, and the
Yeah.
people screaming at you, whatever. And then at the end of the day, I had to count all the money up. I had to get all the money from the whole store, the front end of the store, the my coworkers that watch the over the counter products or the we had where they sold cosmetics or whatever like that. So then here I am, little old me after I had to lock up the store and make sure nobody was watching me lock up the store, I had to carry this bag of money under my arm to take it to the bank to deposit. That's what I said, you know what? They ain't paying me enough for this.
Well,
I
you did
never,
that.
In Miami at the time where it was
You did
like
that. You
not.
did that for 2 years.
yeah, 2 years.
You
And
must,
then
but you really hated every minute.
I hated every minute. But there was a lapse there when unfortunately I was back in Philly going through my radiation treatments. But when I came back and dealing with all that and what I went through, and I've always had the thing is with everything that I've been through, which I told you earlier,
Sure.
still have this strong will to live. I know
That was even
people,
apparent in your coma, I suppose. Sure.
yeah, I know people that back when I had the Hodgkin's lymphoma that never went for treatment because they just didn't want to go
Hmm.
because you literally had to go every day. The first set was like I think I went every day for like 6 weeks. Then I had a break for 2 weeks, and then I had and the next treatment was for like another 3 weeks or whatever. The same thing with when I had the prostate, and before I get to that, is like I drove myself from the suburbs of Philly through the city of Philadelphia to get to downtown Philadelphia to get the University of Penn to be treated. And this was back in, I'm talking, this is in the 80s when things were a lot different. then what happened when I had radiation treatment for my prostate cancer, I continued to work. And I was working in downtown Philly, and I would go to work, then I would leave work, take the train out to Penn, get treated, get back on the train, go back out to the suburbs and go home. And I did that. And unfortunately, I worked for a company that wasn't, even though I gave my blood, sweat, and tears to this company. They didn't really appreciate, but we all know what it's like to work for
Sure.
employers that you don't care for. But like people would say to me, why didn't you take a leave of absence? Looking now, I should have taken a leave of absence, but I continued to work because I didn't want to think about myself having cancer or having to go through.
Kept you busy, kept your mind off of that stuff, sure.
I still have this thing. That's why I'm probably not, most people don't think about dying, like I have somebody I was out to lunch and they said, I'm not afraid of dying. I'm like, I never think about dying. I mean, when you get to this age, you
Sure.
really realize how short life is. You hear that growing up, in your 20s, you're invincible. We live through, and I have aches and pains. I said to my what the other day, I said, I think I'm starting to have these back pains because back in I lived through the disco era. So like we clubbed and all that other stuff and you dance or whatever. So no wonder my back is killing me now. My knees have been given out. But so where I'm getting at is like I don't think about dying, but I fear that it's inevitable. But you just have to like that's why you hear and Stan, I don't have to tell you to use the analogy of where we live, but you hear these people that complain and you guys will know and you kvetching and all this other stuff about it's like they don't really like people come up to me, they say, you look good, and I know you weren't, da, 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 Michelle was concerned about you and blah, blah, blah. But you don't know. But then you turn around and you hear this person complaining about somebody or something, and it's like
Enough. I don't want to hear it.
I don't want to hear it. I mean, I complain,
Oh, sure.
but like to a point where it's like enough.
I heard something very profound recently. It said the death is not the opposite of life. It's the opposite of birth. So
Mm.
it kind of gets
Yeah.
confused. Alan, a question. Do you think you're under tremendous stress for those 2 years of running in Florida? You didn't enjoy yourself, but
Right.
that kind of stress creates different body chemistry within yourself, with the flight or fight. So you think was a contributing factor in exacerbating the illness at all?
The cortisol levels like going up maybe from stress that
Might have
affected
been. I
yourself.
mean, when I moved, I wanted to, the reason why I moved is like I wanted to improve myself career-wise. Plus, I hadn't met anybody to marry. And so I figured, well, and I knew about Miami from visiting every year with my parents and my aunt and uncle in the 60s and 70s, but I hadn't been to Miami since the early 70s. And I remember Collins Avenue and Lincoln Road and all that. And, it was our people there, right? But then I moved down in the mid 80s and it's like, oh my God, there's culture shock here. And it was like the Miami Vice days when I lived there, but so it was different. So, and I used to, because I used to go up to Fort Lauderdale to try to meet people because I wasn't meeting people that I wanted to meet in Miami. So probably, to answer your question, I might have, but I never really thought much about it.
Well, but I think your will to live, your desire, your strong to fight, fight, fight was evident even during the coma because you really weren't aware of what was going on.
No, and you know what's funny? I don't know if I ever told you this, Stan, but like the one thing I do remember in that 3 week period that I have no recollection. I literally have no recollection. I woke up on the day I woke up and I had the whiteboard in the room and it said it was March 16th or
What was your
17th.
first thought?
Well, my first thought, it took me a while to comprehend.
How did you wake up? You just woke up on your own?
Woke up. Well, they probably were trying to get me up because Michelle told me they pulled I guess the tubes out of my nose and throat or whatever. But I don't remember any of that. She told me at one point I was sitting up in the bed. I have no recollection of that. But in the 3 weeks that I have, think I had, and to this day, I can tell you, I had an ongoing dream the entire 3 weeks. What was it? Um, Part of my dream was, and this is really weird, I was over in Europe undergoing a clinical trial for atrial valve replacement, which I was having. And all the doctors and the aides were people that I had worked with previously in my life, whether it was
Wow.
pharmaceutical companies or whatever. And I would say, wait a minute, why is Eric in a scrubs? Or like, so that was part of it. Then another part was that no matter where in this dream, and it was an ongoing dream, there was somebody coming in and checking my vitals. So in essence, they probably, in reality, they were coming into my room at the
Sure.
hospital, checking my vitals. There was a point where I called my wife to say that I found out that this trial that I was over in Europe, and I forget whether I think I was in France or I was in Belgium or whatever,
Astral
or
projection.
or part of it was in Greece because we had been to Greece in 2022, that I found out that people were dying from this trial. And I called her up. She was in the States. And I said, you got to come over here and get me off this trial because people are dying. So
Woo.
maybe that was at a point where I was actually at that point of passing on. And then and I told her to stay with me or whatever like that. And there were times where I felt in the dream that a chair was beside me and I could feel them against my leg. Now, this was in this dream, this ongoing dream. But then again, then I was like at the Jersey Shore. It wasn't the shore that we were on, but I was at a Jersey Shore at a Walgreens getting blood work done in the back room.
So
And
crazy.
then I was in a church where I saw people that I went to pharmacy school with. It. So it was like my whole life was spinning while I was in this coma.
Did you ever see yourself outside your own body looking back at yourself in the bed or no?
No, I was always looking up. I was always looking up. And I used to say like this thing that was I was at the Jersey Shore and it was in the middle of the winter and but it wasn't the Jersey town that we were in. And I forget what I was saying. Why am I here? And it was on Atlantic Avenue, and there's an Atlantic Avenue in Margate. Well, there's Atlantic Avenues all over.
Sure.
But anyway, it's just like this whole thing. And to this day, Les, I'm telling you both now, I can still remember that dream. And that was
That's very vivid. That's crazy.
Well, we are
pretty
so
vivid.
glad that you did wake up and that that was
Yeah, I
your not
know.
your time.
Yeah, no, well, that's the thing. It wasn't my time to go.
Yeah.
It wasn't my time.
Wow.
This
Wow.
this went in a
Oh,
direction
I
I
know
never
you're
could have
right.
anticipated.
Yeah, but it's
And you
incredible.
know me as a quiet man, so I have a
Not
workout.
anymore. Forget about that. Woo.
But wow, what an incredible, and that's why we started this podcast is that, you said people look at you, oh, you look great, you look fine, you look fit, but they have no idea the hurdles that you have had to handle and the troubles you've had and the challenges you had to face just by looking at you. And that's what happens every day is that people look at people and say, oh, they seem fine, but they have
Yeah,
no, yeah,
I mean, I know people that I think if they had one of the multiple conditions
Oh,
that I've had in my
God.
yeah,
life, wouldn't be able to handle it. They wouldn't be able to cope.
yeah.
They'd be on every antipsychotic and anti-anxiety known to man, but like I've
I guess
never,
my last question for you would be how, where does that come from?
That strength.
That strength in coping with it? Because you have certainly seen your share of crappy situations. Where does that strength and that power of,
I've always had, especially from the my first major illness, which I wasn't sick until I had this Hodgkin's lymphoma. I don't know. I mean, I could say I had a great childhood growing up in the city of Philly back then, and like with Stan, you played with the kids in the neighborhood in a row house, and you went to the corner drugstore and got candy you got all the candy you wanted for like 25 cents, and you got a toy for 10 cents, and when it was your birthday or Hanukkah, you got a Milton Bradley game for $1. You were royalty. But and I was a person also I never expected anything from my parents. I never had to ask my parents for something that they couldn't afford or whatever. And I mean, I know the generations are different. I'm not putting
Sure.
anybody down how you raise children, whatever like that. But I mean, and I'm fortunate. I know a lot of people that you hear stories even today. They don't talk to their kids. And they don't because they don't talk to the kids, they don't talk to the grandkids. And it's kind of sad. Michelle and I don't have children. We did that was one other part that I didn't mention is that Michelle and I met in 2003, and we got married the following year because her mother was dying for stage 4 lung cancer. So we got married right away. But neither one of us had ever been married before. We both wanted the same thing. It was, what do they call Bashir, which
Sure.
is the Yiddish word, that it was meant to be. And like every married couple, you have your shtick, you have your disagreements, whatever like that, but we have each other, and that's what's important. And thank God I had her for me last year to sit there. I know she went to the hospital every single day for 6 weeks straight. So
You win the Lucky Bastard of the Week award.
Keep an eye on the mailbox for your trophy.
I hope I gave you some information.
Oh,
You
fabulous,
did.
fabulous.
Thank you so much for being our guest.
So it's going to help a lot of other people. Oh, people have questions. The story is great. It's just it's far-reaching impact, no question.
Thank you. We appreciate you taking time out of your canasta schedule to
Okay.
come and talk with us.
It was a pleasure talking to you,
I'll
buddy.
see you around the ranch.
Okay. See you.
Thanks a lot. Talk to
Thank
you
you,
soon.
Alan.
Give
Thanks.
regards. Bye-bye.
Have a great day. Thank you so much.
Sometimes
Wow.
it goes in a direction you don't quite expect.
But that's the thing. That's because it's their story, right? Like if we would talk to him like a different day, would he have told us something else? Who knows? But it's just
Actually,
you learned probably a lot about him just now.
Yeah, true. But living in a retirement community itself, you're seeing people in a different stage of their life. Having worked in surgery for years after my undergraduate work, you just realize that people can look great from the outside, can be horrible inside, and vice versa. Some people they look like they're on the last leg, and these guys are going to live to like 120. So you really can't tell by outward appearances. When a disease does take control of you, you see deterioration. But initially, you don't always see
Did
that.
you know he was in the hospital last year? Do you know that?
He was in tough shape for a while. It was
Wow.
really touch and go, but woo.
Well, that's gonna be hard too, because I know that in your community, you talk about retirement, but you're of the age of people that are getting
Oh,
I mean, we all are, right? We all deal with people
It's a
who
higher
have
percentage
friends.
based
Yeah.
on the demographic, no question
Yeah.
about that.
Well, that's a good guest, Dad. Good job. Finally, you get us a guest.
I don't
Just kidding.
I don't want to get that Lucky Bastard of the Week award. I'll just take once and slow. Take it
Yeah, please do.
Okay.
Please do. Well, listener, thanks for listening. We never know where the story's going to go, but we appreciate you tuning in and joining us on the adventures that we get to have with all of our different guests. And until next time,
I would love to have an American Indian shaman come on and talk about the bark on the tree, the stuff in the flower. That's important stuff.
all right, if you know someone, send them our way. Thanks for listening, listener.
Till next time.
Till
Bye-bye.
next time. Bye.
Hey, thank you for tuning into today's What's Your Story podcast.
To learn more or share your story, go to jamiemarco.com. That's www.jaimemarco.com. And we will see you next time.